So, in our last class, we were reading this chapter within and without, and how Rabindranath was describing his experiences when he was a child. He used to look out from his room and look at these people who used to come and bathe there in the tank, and also the fact that his movements were restricted, and he talks about these poems that he had written later on. So let us pick up from there, and here let us continue. I would stand and gaze. My glance first falls on the row of coconut trees on the farther edge of our inner garden. Through these are seen the Singh's garden, with its cluster of huts and tank, and on the edge of the tank, the dairy of our milk woman, Tara. So this garden was called Singh's garden. And there was this tank where the milk woman used to come and wash clothes. Still farther on, mixed up with the tree tops, the various shapes and different heights of the terraced roofs of Calcutta, flashing back the blazing whiteness of the midday sun, stretch right away into the greyish blue of the eastern horizon. And some of these far distant dwellings from which to stand forth their roofed stairways leading up to the terrace look as if with uplifted finger and a wink they are hinting to me of the mysteries of their interiors. So the boy Tagore used to look out, and he used to watch all these buildings, and he would be thinking about them, and his mind would wander about this outside scenery. Like the beggar at the palace door who imagines impossible treasures to be held in the strong rooms close to him, I can hardly tell of the wealth of play and freedom which these unknown dwellings seem to me crowded with. From the farthest depth of the sky, full of burning sunshine, overhead the thin shrill cry of a kite reaches my ear. So in the afternoon, when everything was everywhere, there was uh, quiet prevailing, and this lonely kite would be flying in the sky, and its cry would reach the ears of the boy. And from the lane adjoining Singh's garden comes up past the houses, silent in their noonday slumber, the sing-song of the bangle seller, chai churi chai, and my whole being would fly away from the workaday world. So the sounds of old Kolkata, that is what Tagore describes here, how the peddlers, they used to uh, go through the streets during the afternoon, when everywhere there was everyone was taking rest in the afternoon. They were sleeping, noonday slumber. So during that time, these peddlers used to uh, cry out and try to sell their uh, wares. My father hardly ever stayed at home. He was constantly roaming about. So now Rabindranath comes to the description of Debendranath Tagore, his father. His rooms on the third story used to remain shut up. I would pass my hands through the Venetian shutters, and thus opening the latch, get the door open. So Debendranath Tagore, actually he used to stay uh, in the third story, and when he was absent, those rooms would be shut up. But the child Rabindranath was really very curious, and he went up there. And what he would do, he would uh, open the door by a trick, passing his hands through the Venetian shutters, and spend the afternoon lying motionless on his sofa at the south end. So he would stay there in the afternoon, and no one was there to sort of forbid him. First of all, it was a room always closed, and then there was the stolen entry. This gave it a deep flavor of mystery. Further, the broad, empty expanse of terrace to the south, glowing in the rays of the sun, would set me daydreaming. So, actually, he entered this room without being seen by anyone. It was a kind of a secret entry. And since the room was almost always closed, since Devendranath Tagore did not stay at home much, uh, it had a kind of a mystery for this young boy, for the young poet. And uh, the broad terrace was there to explore. And during the quiet afternoons, he would be thinking about daydreaming about many things. There was yet another attraction. The water walks had just been started in Calcutta, and in the first exuberance of its triumphant entry, it did not stint even the Indian quarters of their supply. So the water supply was being initiated. In that golden age of pipe water, it used to flow even up to my father's third story rooms. And turning on the shower tap, I would indulge to my heart's content in an untimely bath. So this was another very kind of an added attraction for the boy Tagore, and he would go up there and he would bathe, and it was really very soothing kind of a bath that he used to have during those uh, summer summer afternoons. And turning on the shower tap, I would indulge to my heart's content in an untimely bath, not so much for the comfort of it as to give rein to my desire to do just as I fancied. So he, of course, it was a very pleasurable thing, but he wanted to have his own way, wanted to do whatever he wanted without being uh, sort of stopped. The alternation of the joy of liberty and the fear of being caught made that shower of municipal water send arrows of delight thrilling into me. So it was a kind of an act of liberty. And he was also fearful that some servant or anyone else might come up and he would be caught, and then he would be forbidden to go to that room. It was perhaps because the possibility of contact with the outside was so remote that the joy of it came to me so much more readily. So, as we know, uh, the young children in the Tagore household, they were not allowed to go out. So there was a kind of a restriction that was placed on them. Now, when material is in profusion, the mind gets lazy and leaves everything to it, forgetting that for a successful feast of joy, its internal equipment counts for more than the external. So everything, if it is available in profusion, so the mind gets a kind of a lazy, and it it does not enjoy that thing very well. forgetting that for a successful feast of joy, its internal equipment counts for more than the external. So the internal uh, satisfaction that is more essential to enjoy something wholeheartedly. This is the chief lesson which his infant state has to teach to man. There his possessions are few and trivial, yet he needs no more for his happiness. The world of play is spoiled for the unfortunate youngster who is burdened with an unlimited quantity of playthings. So if any child, if he or she is given a lot of playthings, then of course the uh, he or she will be spoiled. To call our inner garden a garden is to say a deal too much. Its properties consisted of a citron tree, a couple of plum trees of different varieties, and a row of coconut trees. So there were a few trees there. In the center was a paved circle, the cracks of which various grasses and weeds had invaded and planted in them their victorious standards. Only those flowering plants which refused to die of neglect continued uncomplainingly to perform their respective duties without casting any aspersions on the gardener. So the plants which they were not taken care of by the gardener, but they still blossomed, or they came up, and they, as it were, they did not have any complaints against the gardener. In the northern corner was a rice husking shed where the inmates of the inner apartments would occasionally foregather when household necessity demanded. This last vestige of rural life has since owned defeat and slunk away, ashamed and unnoticed. So the rice husking shed, that was kind of a place which, with the development of Kolkata, the Kolkata households, it has disappeared. So it was a sign of the village life. Nonetheless, I suspect that Adam's Garden of Eden could hardly have been better adorned than this one of ours. For if he and his paradise were alike naked, they needed not to be furnished with material things. It is only since his tasting of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, until he can fully digest it, that man's need for external furniture and embellishment persistently grows. So, as Tagore says, Adam's Garden of Eden must have been poorly furnished than his garden, because it had so few, perhaps as he thinks, so few embellishments or decorations. Our inner garden was my paradise. It was enough for me. I will remember how in the early autumn dawn I would run there as soon as I was awake. A scent of dewy grass and foliage would rush to meet me, and the morning with its cool, fresh sunlight would peep out at me over the top of the eastern garden wall, from below the trembling tassels of the coconut palms. So this was a place, the inner garden, which was a favorite place for the young poet. And during the autumn dawns, he would spend some time there, and he would witness the rising of the sun. He was an early riser always, as we know. And next he says, there is another piece of vacant land to the north of the house, which to this day we call the Golabari, barn house. So the crops were stored most probably there. The name shows that in some remote past, this must have been the place where the year's store of grain used to be kept in a barn. Then, as with brother and sister in infancy, the likeness between town and country was visible all over. So, this is a more common thing that can be seen in the country, but even in Tagore's household, this was there. Now, the family resemblance can hardly be traced. This Golabari would be my holiday haunt if I got the chance. It would hardly be correct to say that I went there to play. It was the place, not of not play, which drew me. So he did not go there to play, but it was a kind of a place which had some kind of an attraction for him. Why this was so is difficult to tell. Perhaps its being a deserted bit of wasteland, lying in an out-of-the-way corner, gave it its charm for me. So it was a little way off from the main household, and that is why he wanted to explore. It was entirely outside the living quarters and bore no stamp of usefulness. So it was a bit farther away from the main building. Moreover, it was as unadorned as it was useless, for no one had ever planted anything there. It was doubtless for these reasons that this desert spot offered no resistance to the free play of the boy's imagination. Whenever I got any loophole to evade the vigilance of my warders and could contrive to reach the Golabari, I felt I had a holiday indeed. So often it so happened that Tagore would escape and he would stay there, spend some time there, and he would be happy to evade the vigilance of the servants and the people who were assigned to look after him. So it was a kind of a holiday for him. There was yet another place in our house which I have even yet not succeeded in finding out. A little girl playmate of my own age called this the King's Palace. I have just been there, she would sometimes tell me, but somehow the propitious moment never turned up when she could take me along with her. So this little girl who was Tagore's playmate told him of a place called the King's Palace, and naturally it excited Tagore's curiosity. But this little girl could not take him there because most probably it existed in her imagination, and that is why, uh, since it was not a real place, she could not take him there. That was a wonderful place, and its playthings were as wonderful as the games that were played there. It seemed to me it must be somewhere very near, perhaps in the first or second story. The only thing was one never seemed to be able to get there. So that was a frustrating thing. Tagore felt that it was very near him, but he could not find it out. How often have I asked my companion, only tell me, is it really inside the house or outside? And she would always reply, no, no, it's in this very house. So it was there. I would sit and wonder, where then can it be? Don't I know all the rooms of the house? Who the king might be I never cared to inquire. Where his palace is still remains undiscovered. This much was clear. The king's palace was within our house. So, according to this little girl, it was inside the house. But sadly enough for Tagore, we could not find it out. Looking back on childhood's days, the thing that recurs most often is the mystery which used to fill both life and world. So to the child, to the minds of children, of course, many things are sort of infused with a kind of a mysterious air. And for the boy poet, it was also the same thing. Something undreamt of was lurking everywhere, and the uppermost question every day was, when, oh, when would we come across it? It was as if nature held something in her closed hands and was smilingly asking us, what do you think I have? What was impossible for her to have was the thing we had no idea of. So, something that was uh, maybe that could have been seen by them, by the children, something that was near, but still it appeared to be far away, as if it was impossible to have. So, this mysterious quality that was there in the house itself, in the inner uh, part of the house, the outside world, everything had a very strong influence on Tagore. Well do I remember the custard apple seed which I had planted, kept in a corner of the south veranda, and he used to water every day. So, Tagore wanted to plant a custard apple. Actually, he had done so. The thought that the seed might possibly grow into a tree kept me in a great state of fluttering wonder. Custard apple seeds still have the habit of sprouting, but no longer to the accompaniment of that feeling of wonder. So, to the mind of the boy, the fact that a sapling might emerge from this seed that was filled with mystery and wonder. But when one grows old, of course, one does not pay attention to such things. The fault is not in the custard apple, but in the mind. We had once stolen some rocks from an elder cousin's rockery and started a little rockery of our own. The plants which we sowed in its interstices were cared for so excessively that it was only because of their vegetable nature that they managed to put up with it till their untimely death. So obviously they could not survive in the rocks. Words cannot recount the endless joy and wonder which this miniature mountaintop held for us. We had no doubt that this creation of ours would be a wonderful thing to our elders also. The day that we sought to put this to the proof, however, the hillock in the corner of our room with all its rocks and all its vegetation vanished. So the boys actually they had built a kind of a small hillock with the rocks they had gathered, but immediately when the elders came to know about it, they dismantled it. The knowledge that the schoolroom floor was not a proper foundation for the erection of a mountain was imparted so rudely and with such suddenness that it gave us a considerable shock. The weight of stone of which the floor was relieved settled on our minds when we realized the gulf between our fancies and the will of our elders. So they were really disappointed by the attitude of the elders. It was a shock for them, and they had not anticipated that it would be dismantled. They had thought that the elders would appreciate it, but it was not to be. How intimately did the life of the world throb for us in those days? Earth, water, foliage, and sky, they all spoke to us and would not be disregarded. So the children of the household, they were really in communion with nature. And everything that they saw around them appeared to be beautiful and mysterious. How often were we struck by the poignant regret that we could only see the upper story of the earth and knew nothing of its inner story. All our planning was as to how we could pry beneath its dust-colored cover. So, what was underneath the ground? The earth. If thought we could drive in bamboo after bamboo, one over the other, we might perhaps get into some sort of touch with its inmost depths. So, in their childish way, they thought that bamboos, a number of bamboos would ultimately, if they were driven in, they could reach the center of the earth. So let us stop here. Actually, I could not begin the class on time, but as you can see, Tagore is speaking of the outside world, the inner world, everything, and how he appeared, how everything appeared to him as mysterious and beautiful. So